Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2023 found footage horror anthology sequel, VHS 85. The film obviously has several directors, including David Bruckner and Scott Derrickson, and it stars James Ransom, Freddie Rodriguez, Kelly Garner, Jordan Belfort, and Chelsea Grant, as well as many others. Now, this obviously, if you know the VHS franchise, you kind of know what you're going to get here. We get five, I think it's five, yeah, it's five short horror anthology stories with a found footage theme, and it is set in the 80s. So, essentially, what you get here is it's kind of like obviously, if you know what I mean, a VHS tape from the 80s. Someone's kind of playing a VHS tape from the 80s. It's got that rough edge to it. It's like flickering going on. It's like it's a bad copy. And sewn into this tape is a series of like horror anthology stories with like a wraparound story as well. So it does feel very 80s. It's definitely got that 80s theme going right through it. And essentially what we get, as I've said, is a number of stories here, and one of the stories is kind of split into two. I actually thought they were separate stories, and then they kind of tied together. And there's a story called No Wake, which is the first one, and then I think either the third or fourth one, something like that, is called Ambrosia. So initially you think they're separate, but they actually are very, very much tied together. And I'll give you the basic outline of the stories. Now, No Wake focuses on a group of friends going in a camper van out to the lake to have some fun. Some of them are kind of staying on the shore side, and some of them going out on the boat to have fun on the lake. And something pretty horrific happens, and obviously I don't want to spoil it. I actually found this No Wake story to be incredibly effective and really good. It turned out quite unexpected, I think it's fair to say. I mean, something happens that is fairly grotesque and horrific, and then the story turns itself on its head and becomes something else as well, which was a nice surprise. They didn't need to do that, and I thought it was still an effective story. And that's kind of what ties it into the story later on as an Ambrosia story that kind of starts off with people seemingly having a party to celebrate something. And the thing that they're celebrating is connected to the first story, and that's all I'm going to say. Is this the strongest story? I think it is certainly up there because of the two that are kind of tied together. And I certainly thought it was very, very good and very, very engaging. I think the second story was called God of Death. I thought this was another effective one, another story that starts off showing one thing that's quite horrific and then flips it on its head and becomes something else. And essentially, there's an earthquake takes place, and we follow the survivors of this earthquake kind of trapped in a building trying to get out, which is horrific enough, but then something I don't know how to phrase it without giving it away. Something pretty horrific happens, and that it would appear that they are not the only ones in the building. Yeah, that's all I want to say, and I'm really cautious about giving any spoilers away, because half the fun of these VHS short stories is to watch them and kind of see the surprises for yourself. And again, I thought this was good, very, very effective, and I think that the graphic violence and gore that we get in this VHS, I thought was very well done. Wince-inducing stuff at times. But yeah, I thought God of Death was definitely an effective story as well. The next one is called Techno God, and this, you could argue, maybe was the weakest for me. However, I do think all the stories had their own value to some degree. I don't think this was a bad one. And this is, you get a woman on stage, essentially saying that we've killed all the gods, and the god that we all worship now is this technology god. And then she kind of experiments with virtual reality in order to try and communicate with this so-called techno god. As you can imagine, it doesn't go well. Again, I don't want to say any more on that story. And while the conclusion to this story is certainly entertaining if you're a gore and horror fan, much of it I thought was, I don't know, it just didn't click with me like the rest of the stories, but it certainly had some merit. The next one was like a serial killer type story called Dream Kill. And the basic crux of this story is police detectives are being posted videotapes of murders prior to the murders happening. So they get a videotape of this murder, and then days later the murder actually takes place. So you've got this police detective played by Freddy Rodriguez who is attempting to solve this case. And that's all I want to say on that one. So as you can imagine, you get like videotape footage of the serial killer doing what he's doing, and then you get this story playing out, and again it turns itself on its head a little bit. It almost becomes like a Terminator story by the end of it. But it was pretty good, fairly impressive, and some gory kills in this one. And the wraparound story that we get here is called Total Copy. And this is like, so in between each story, you get like a couple of minutes more of this story. And the crux of this story is you get these people experimenting on something. And this thing that they're experimenting on, they think they've got full control of. And as the stories progress, you can see that the anxiety and danger is increasing until the final conclusion of that story as well. For me, I thought VHS 85 was very, very enjoyable. I mean, I like found footage, so it's great, and I like anthology films. So again, it's a win for me. And pretty much every VHS film that I've watched, I have enjoyed, and I found merit in each of the stories. I do think it's a strong anthology series, VHS, and I think Shudder now have done the last two. Correct me if I'm wrong. VHS 99, which I enjoyed, VHS 85. I love these themed ones that they're doing, like one set in the 90s, one set in the 80s, I like where they're going with the franchise, and I like the fact that they are really getting strong directors on board with some pretty interesting visions that they're showing now in the franchise. So yeah, I hope Shudder continue making the VHS movies, because I think they're doing a pretty good job with it. And if you're a fan of this series, I think you'll find some merit in all these stories. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this review. I will be back, of course, with plenty more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.